black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
The first movement is in 710. It's led by a man named Tarif, T-A-R-I-F. Tarifa is named after him. And Tarif leads 400 Moors or Berbers, beat these guys. And so in 711, another group is led by a man named Tariq, who was an African governor, and his commander-in-chief is a man named Musa, who is an Arab. I don't know if he's black or white, I don't know. It may not even be important in this context. But they lead 10 to 20,000, mostly Berber or Moorish soldiers, and a few Arabs into Spain. And they fight and defeat a Visigothic army led by a man named Roderick in 711. You all still with me? Most of y'all anyway. Now let me read this brief quote. I think this is good stuff. And this is a paragraph from the book. In 711, with a Berber or Moorish expeditionary force and a small number of Arab translators and propagandists, some say 300, Tariq crossed the straits and disembarked near a rocky promontory from which this day has borne his name, Jabal Tariq or Tariq's Mountain, which we call Gibraltar. In August 711, he won a decisive victory over the Visigoth army. It was during the conflict that Roderick, the last Visigoth king, was killed. On the eve of the battle, Tariq is alleged to have aroused his troops with the following words, and I quote, "My brethren, or my brothers, the enemy is before you, the sea is behind you. Where would you run to? Follow your general. I am resolved either to lose my life or to trample on the prostrate king of the Romans." And they wiped the Visigoths out. The Africans won that battle, and Roderick himself was killed. And apparently soon Musa joined Tariq in Spain right after that, and they helped subdue most of the Iberian Peninsula, and then the Moors began to come over. In fact, it says in the aftermath of these brilliant struggles, Berbers or Moors by the thousands flooded into the Iberian Peninsula. So eager were they to come that some of them are said to have floated over on tree trunks. They couldn't wait to get here. Tariq himself, at the conclusion of his illustrious military career, retired to the distant east, we are informed, to spread the teachings of Islam. This is in direct contradiction to what is happening today. Now you have Africans who are leaving Senegal, leaving Mali, can't wait to get over here. But there was a time when Africans did not come to Europe as paupers, and they didn't come just as tourists. They came and reintroduced civilization back into Europe. We should never lose sight of this.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. My name is Keith Smokey Johnson, and I would like to welcome those of you who are familiar with the show and those of you who are new to the show. The purpose of the Umoja Circle is to correct errors where errors are found and to introduce facts where we find that so many people are working on fiction when it comes to who we are as people of African descent. There are hundreds and hundreds of fact-based books that are out there, but many of you might not even know, I'm sure don't even know any of this. The most research most folks do today, and I had to say it, they don't read, okay? But yet there are all kinds of discussions on very important and cogent topics about who we are as a people of African descent. You see, in this country, racism is a power dynamic. And in order for you to push against that, you have to be informed and you have to have facts. And you got to not only point to one little fact, but you have to come from many different sources. And that's what I've learned from studying great scholars for the last 30 years, almost, that I've been doing this show. Okay, and I had to study. I read all these books that I come across and learn from. So, but this is part two of a two-part discussion that I am to deal with this topic of who were the Moors. And I have this little image here to show you. Who were they? Are they the Arabs? Because we all, when we see documentaries or they point to certain books, they always use the word Arabs. Okay, but that's one of those tricks of what we're going to have to deal with. Though I want to point out in this discussion. Okay, they are the Arabs who came into existence. Yes, they were part of the army that entered Spain in 710 and 711, but they were the minority. You had converted Africans. You had great empires like the Mali Empire of medieval Africa. We have Mansa Musa and the great wealth that he produced. But you had also, before the Mali, there was the great empire of Ghana, okay, the west coast of Africa, which included the country of Benin today. Okay, and I'll bring that name up again. But that empire started in 330 BC and did not end until 1250 AD. How come you don't know about that? And it had that's where the Gold Coast, and it was abundance of gold even before the Moors. Okay, so people who you call Moors, as we said in the first show, it means scorched, it means burnt. As been said by the Greeks, said by the Romans, they always looked at the people. Ethiopian, which is another name came from the Greeks, means burnt skin. Does he fit that description, this brother? Yes, not the kind of images we get of whenever a documentary shows Moors. You got these, and I'm not knocking somebody, but it's about the truth. Because our people have been penalized for 400 years in this country, saying that no people have given anything to the world. That's why we were enslaved, because we're savages and all these other things. Nonsense. We were kidnapped and used for cheap labor, non-compensated labor. And you had to justify this thing that contradicts the land of the free and the home of the brave and, democracy and all that stuff. It was nothing like that. We came from ancient people. Those are the people that were kidnapped at the end of the Mali Empire, Songhai Empire, and the Great Ghana Empire that preceded them all. And they had all the people in that northern African area were all part of that. And they looked like him for the majority of the time, the majority of human history. So let's go on, continue where I got a lot of my sources, and I have my copy right here. The Moors in Spain by Stanley Lang Poole. Okay, this was written in 1883. Look who they got the front cover. Okay, there's a famous painting that's on his cover. Okay, does he look like Charlton Heston or anybody else? No, that's a Moor. That's an African. A Moor just means burnt skin. It's not a religion, and that's some of the tricks that they did. If you're a Moor, that means you're Islamic. No, just the Greeks didn't know about Islam. When Alexander the Great would call people that look like him Moors, which you got from the Phoenicians who dealt along the Mediterranean in ancient times. So if you don't understand to weave this complexity, you're going to be hoodwinked, and Malcolm said, and bamboozled. Let's go on to where I left off the last time. I was talking about who were these people that the Moors kicked out, okay, and sent them reeling back into northern Europe from Spain, okay. And if you see the image of Spain there, they shoved all it's called the Germanic people called the Visigoths. And they were invaders too at that time. After Rome fell in 410, the Western Roman Empire, there's still an Eastern Roman Empire out of Constantinople, okay, that fell a few decades later. But the Roman Empire that we are familiar with Italy and that were taken over by all these waves of Germanic people like the Vandals. Okay, the Vandals were so brutal in the destruction that you got a word in the English language called vandalism. Okay, so that's what they brought. Okay, then we're seeing later on what these Africans who conquered them, spreading Islam, but they had their African traditions and how they dealt with the world that our people should know, because this is who we descend from. Okay, who were, these Germanic people who were influential in the declining years of Western Roman Empire and during much of the early Middle Ages, okay? They sacked Rome in 410, vandalized what was left, and established the powerful Visigoth kingdom in the Iberian and southern Gaul, okay? Gaul was Germany, close to the Alps, and around there you have France, and Switzerland and all those regions. All of them speak a form of Germanic language. All right, Iberia is the Portugal and Spain. Okay, this was the early 700s. This is what was going on when the Moors came in there. Let's go to the next one. Well, there's no singular Visigothic identity in modern era. They kind of left that out. The integration of the Visigoths into the Hispano-Roman culture, combined with subsequent historical events, including the Reconquista and the intermarriage with other groups, contributed to the ethnogenesis of the modern Spaniards and Portuguese. Okay, they have their roots in Germanic people. Let's go on. Okay, don't have to believe me. What was going on around the 700s and the 600s in Europe during this period of time? I'm talking not in Spain, but the other side of Pyrenees, Roman fall, Europe what was going on? I would think it was called the Dark Age, okay, from the 500s to when they started doing their crusades. Okay, so listen what this white scholar had to say about, Europe at the time. Okay, his name is Joseph McCabe, and he wrote, "None of our modern sophistry," now that word sophistry means deceit. Okay, that's what we were getting in our history books, the lies that they were saying about who were the Europeans, everything came out of the Western civilization. No, this is what was going on around that time. From the 5th to the 11th century, the 5th century meaning the 600s, by the year 1000, Europe was reduced to the conditions which, if we were not Europeans, we should frankly call barbarism. Okay, talking about his own European people. Yet at all times, the Arabs had a splendid civilization in Spain. Now, even this man who was really being critical about what was going on in the Dark Ages in Europe, he still used that word Arab. He could not just say the Moors. He couldn't bring himself to say black folks. Okay, he just added to the that's a little like sophistry, which I said means deceit. When you're making fallacious statements, okay, the sophistry is how they try to trick you. They might change a word or point to another group and say it's the original group. This is what we have to weave our way through when we have to deal with history. That's why you need to find source materials. Let's go on to the next one. And this was done. That writing was done in 1931, so it ain't something recent. Okay, the Arabian invasion of North Africa. The Arabs came out of the Arabian deserts in 639 when they conquered Cairo and Egypt. And actually, the Egyptians who were there at the time asked them to come in to help because the Eastern Romans were still ruling and they were being brutal. You could find that in a book called The History of Northern Rome and Northern Africa. I got the book right here, one of the books that I'm using. The Arab invasion of North Africa was of great consequence. Many Africans fled south from North Africa to the land south of the Sahara, sub-Saharan Africa. That's where a lot of the black folks were starting to push south, okay? More and more Arabs started coming in, pushing Islam, but they also dominated ethnically. There was conflicts between the darker-skinned Africans who were in control at the time and the Arabs. They dominated again. Okay, those who remained were converted to Islam. Arab occupied Egypt in 639, Tripoli in 643, and southwest Morocco by 681. In 698, they appointed a leader called Musa ibn Nusayr, governor of all of North Africa. He's the one who initiated what was going on, what eventually made the conquest of Spain. And he's from Yemen. And Yemen be considered an Arab, but if you go into southern Yemen, you'll find people that look like me. So whether he was Arabic or half or black, the chronicles don't make it clear. Let's go on to the next one real quick. Okay, and this was what happened in 710. Musa sent a reconnaissance mission of 500 African converts to Islam into Spain, led by a gentleman named Tarif, a fellow African. Using 4 ships supplied by Musa, they landed at a port today that is called, in Spain, Tarifa, and plundered that place. Tarifa was not the original name of the port. The victorious expedition renamed it in honor of that gentleman called Tarif. Incidentally, the Moors at a later date imposed special taxes at this point, which should be interesting to people who are listening to the politics today, with which we get the word tariff. You don't understand. Tariff came from a black African who helped in the conquest of Spain in Europe, put foot in Europe. It was Tarif. It came from his name. Okay, he conquered that foot, the first place they stepped on to in 710. Okay, let's go on to the next one. In next year, 711, Musa sent a second and more formidable African army into Spain. Tariq ibn Zayd, it's another gentleman, Tariq, not Tarif, which is the guy from the year before, but this guy, Tariq, the African governor of Mauritania, an African country, led the expedition force of 6,700 African soldiers and 300 Arab. 300 Arab. Well, why we keep on seeing images constantly of like the Arabs dominated? No, they were translators and protagonists. In Spain, they occupied Mons Calif, which they renamed, which was you should be familiar with this. They renamed that prominence, that Mount Prominence, Jabal Tariq, meaning hill, rock of Tariq. We call it Gibraltar right now, Jabal Tariq. Okay, the Mount of Tariq. Another black man, 2 black men importing a city and a taxation by one in 710, and the name of Gibraltar came from this black man from Mauritania. If you want to look at the map, you'll find Mauritania in Africa, okay? African people. You see, I'm using different evidential streams. That's that one thing I got on YouTube. You got to do that when you have to weave through this, sophistry that we're being taught right now about who, and being shown on documentaries, always showing Arabs as the people who came into, right? They did come into, but they were like 300 of them compared to 6,000, Africans, black people. Let's go on. The European writer, this monk who was a witness to this invasion, he wrote this about the Moors that he saw, which means scorched, burnt black people. Okay, that's how they just say it. The skin looked like it was burnt. Okay, he said the reins of their meaning the Moors, horses were as fire. Okay, with these red, we are very colorful people. Their faces black as pitch. This is the person who was there. Their eyes shone like burning candles. Their horses were swift as leopards and blah, 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 blah. But he was saying, what did he say? Their faces their faces black as pitch. You can't get any blacker than that. In a previous show, the first show, I showed some of the original inhabitants of North Africa as they drew themselves in the cave in cave drawing, and they were black as pitch. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I didn't even give you the source. The early years of Islamic rule in Spain were, of course, unstable. You have competing interests. Like anybody else, you're going to have not great folks. Okay, some people gonna try to take advantage of the situation. Okay, Muslims took control of the land vacated by the Spaniards who had fled north, across the Pyrenees into Gaul or France. Arabs settled the most fertile land. Again, you got the Arabs doing what they were doing, and they were leaving the less fertile African poor land. Okay, so there was conflict between, it wasn't all, love of Islam, it was conflict, okay, because of the Arab looking down on their African Islamic brothers, okay? So this led to conflict between Musa, the person who sent the two generals in 710 and 711, okay, and Tariq, the African subordinate, okay? So they started competing with each other. So you get the picture. This conflict started happening, okay, between the black Africans, who Moors, and the Arabs, who wanted to more fertile and lucrative wealth. Okay, as always, there's always conflicts. Okay, let's go to the next one. Abdul Rahman, I'm butchering his name, but bear with me, was a Umayyad, a prince of mixed Arab and African ancestry, because people started intermixing again. This is like 700, okay? The early years of Islamic rule in Spain, you started having this mixture. That's why in the first show I showed descendant of the black people in Northern Africa who are still there, and somebody who was of mixed race, and this is what was starting to happen, the later part of the 700s of the 8th century. Okay, in May 756, he became the ruler of Islamic Spain and the first of the important Umayyad monarchs. You had 4 different dynasties in Spain before they got kicked out in 1492 during that 7 years. Okay, and this was the first one who tried to, because you had something like 10 or different, within, 10 years, you had 10 different leaders, and that's not a good, stable situation, starting when they started having issues, okay? So Musa decided to send this gentleman over, and they crowned him the leader or the head of the what was going on in Spain under Islamic rule, and that was the first of the great dynasties. Okay, he created a standing army of 40,000 men, mostly Africans. He also began a navy. In agriculture, he made developments that led to the growth of the farming industry. He introduced accurate land surveying, built. Okay, these are the savages we have told that we come from, these black Africans, because when I was growing up, all I heard that came out of Africa, Africans didn't do nothing. Africans were, bones in their nose. Even in cartoons, Bugs Bunny would, go to, and you see Africans with big lips and bones in the nose, ready to eat Elmer Fudd in the big pot. But this is what Africans were doing, okay? And you saw what was it like in the Dark Ages that was going on. And another thing, let me make it clear, the Dark Ages only happened where? In Europe. The rest of the world, there was no such thing as Dark Ages. They were flourishing all over, including, China and all these other parts of the world where great civilizations were going on. Only in Europe. So why do you think they want to create a scenario where they were some kind of dominant things. When you see these knights in shining armor, it was not spectacular. What was spectacular was what was going south in the Iberian Peninsula, south of the Pyrenees. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Now, how do we know that the culture was mostly African? Well, there was a test that was published in the Human Biology journal in 1992, and I'm talking about the sickle cell anemia. And this particular type of sickle cell anemia, they showed there were two different waves. The first wave started in the 8th century and ended in around the 11th or 12th century, all right, AD. Then the next wave started up where in the Iberian Peninsula, because usually sickle cell associated to black folks, okay? And what they saw to show that genetically, another source of evidence, that genetically, the only way there could have been that much sickle cell trait, and they traced that sickle cell trait back to Benin. Remember I talked about Benin earlier in the last show? Benin, is in Western Africa, part of at the time, the Ghana Empire, Black Ghana Empire. So that means a large portion of those who came into Spain and Portugal, which is the Iberian Peninsula, during the period of time of the Moors were black because that's sickle cell. The other one was when Portugal started the slave trade, when they were going up and down the west coast of Africa. So sickle cell was found in that population that when they started bringing slaves into Portugal, you got black people in Portugal to this day, and they showed through this study of this cells that they had black people in the Iberian Peninsula in two different periods of time that coincided with the Moors and coincide with the insidiousness of enslavement. So let's go on. Okay, let's go on to another one because we talked about that earlier. This is an interesting thing, and I might want to end here to show you this. Egypt, again, I did a couple of shows on Egypt, but I want you to show this image come from Seti. The tomb of Seti the First. He's the father of Ramses II and the grandfather of Ramses III, who had to deal with the sea people, the first set of Europeans who came in, and he lived from the 1290 to about 1274 BCE, long time ago. Okay, you see those two black images? This is on the wall, painted. You can go right there today to his tomb, and you'll see this. This is a cut from the image. The one on the left is the Kemites, or the Egyptians. The one in the middle, the white one, that's Indo-European. That's how they saw Indo-Europeans. The one in the middle is the people from the south, what we call Sudan. Okay, and those other ones are the Asiatics. Look how they drew themselves, and look how they drew their brethren or Nubians on the south, to the south. Black people. They knew who they looked like. They knew who they were, and they did it in stone. And I want to end it there to show that African people were a part of world history. Let's stop this nonsense about showing something other than who we are. You see, I could have went on more and more to show you the great cathedrals and temples that were built that uplifted Spain. But, as usual, run out of time. So I hope you got it. Peace. Hotep. Bye-bye.